In this video, I'm going to show how I replace and remove the brake pads, the brake hardware, it's just a couple pins, and the brake rotors. These are all the tools that you'll need. Actually, not too much, it's just a few bolts. You got a hammer and a punch you're gonna need to get the brake hardware pins out. This is actually needle nose pliers just to get there's little cotter pins, actually I have one right here, that hold the pins in, so you'll need that. A ratchet with an 18mm and a T30 Torx bit. This is for the rotor screw. And then the bungee cord, this is what I use to hang the caliper, so it's not hanging on the weight. So this, or a hook, or anything like that. And the C-clamp is to compress the pistons in the caliper to get the new pads on. And of course some thread lock and some silicone grease to be pretty generous with on the brakes. Also maybe some brake clean, and definitely some PB blaster is recommended. You'll need both of those to help you get things moving, especially if it's an old truck or if things are frozen on there pretty hard. So other than this, maybe just the tools, the jack stands, whatever is needed to get your wheels off so you have access to everything. These are the parts that I use. This is Power Stop Evolution ceramic brake pads. This is the part number for my truck. Same with this here. This is the brake rotor. I use the Evolution coated, 360-degree coated, because I live in Chicago and it gets salty up here, so to help with some of the rust. They're actually pretty good. I use these Power Stops on a couple of my other cars, and they do really well. I recommend them. The other bit for the hardware is this GM Genuine parts. Part number here, it's just a couple pins, a couple cotter pins, but you're in there, and with the money that you're saving doing the work yourself, you may as well go ahead and replace the hardware as well. That's about it. Inside the box, I do want to show you, they give you the instructions for the bed in. 30 decelerations from 30 to 5, leaving 30 seconds in between for brake cooling. So if you need to get that done, obviously be safe, follow all your traffic laws, and do what you gotta do. And that is about it for parts and tools, so let's go ahead and get started on the job. So the car's jacked up, the wheel's been removed, and here's our assembly. First thing I'm going to start with, before I take the two bolts off, is I want to get these pins out. So they're in there pretty hard. So what I do is I get a punch, put that in there, and the hammer, handy dandy hammer, and we hammer it out. But before we do that, you'll see in these pins are little cotter pins that hold it in. So they're pretty easy to get out. Grab it with your pliers. Pull, I'm kind of pushing up right here. Got it. There's that one. And then there's one right here. Let's kind of twist it around the wrong way. Get it started though. There we go. That should come out pretty easily once we get the bracket out. And that just fell off. Now we have better access to our pin in here. Okay, and those have been removed, so now we can take our hammer and our punch and punch the pins out. What I'm going to recommend before we get started is get some PB blaster put on here, and then some PB blaster to put in your pins right here, right there, and right there. Put it in on both sides. Now, as you can see, I did get it started, so I punched them out just a little bit. That's the most difficult part. So what I'm actually going to do before completely removing them, since we are doing the rotor as well, is I'm going to go around back here and remove these two bolts. Got this one here, and there's another one right down here. If you can see it, it's this one. They're in there pretty tight, They're in there pretty tight, so I did have to use a breaker bar just to put on the end of my wrench, and it helps loosen it. There's some thread lock on there, and they're torqued down to about 70 plus, something like that, 60 plus. So they're tough. It's only the 2 bolts. Once you get those out, this whole assembly is gonna literally just be hanging by this hose. So what I've done was I took a bungee cord, wrapped it around the upper control arm, and then once it's free, I'm gonna hang it from the bungee cord so all the pressure is not on this line. Okay, so I have, after the bolts are all, you kind of have to wiggle it a little bit, but it comes up. Just release it, and then the next thing you need to do is you need to get these 2 pistons back in. Otherwise the new pads, they're so thick they won't fit. Best way I've found to do this, and that's why I left the pins in, is to keep the pads in place, is to take your C-clamp and slowly tighten it. Now you want to try to get as centered as you can so that these can compress in easily. I've also removed the brake fluid cap, and also makes it a little bit easier. Just beware, you don't want to go too fast, because then it shoots out of the reservoir, and when it does that, you can get air in your lines. So I'm going to get these compressed, slowly turning this, see how it's centered, until the pistons are completely compressed, and we'll do that for each side. Okay, so I actually started compressing this one from the other side. If you remember, I had this flipped completely over. It was tough for me to get to the inner one because of this brake line here from the other side. So what I did was I just flipped this over, so now we're looking at it from the top. I guess you could call this the top, and then just compressing it in from here. And as you can see, all 4 pistons have been nicely compressed into place. So then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna let this hang here for a minute, and then we're gonna take the rotor off. Which, speaking of, while it's hanging, I'll go ahead and show you how I have it hanging. So like I said, I wrapped this little bungee cord around the upper control arm a couple times, and then I actually have the hooks into the little screw holes, the bolt holes, where it bolts into here. Just let that hang. Okay, hopefully you had yours soaking in the PB blaster. If you did, that makes this a lot easier. So you'll find with the brake removed, and honestly it would have been a problem regardless, the rotor spins freely. Oops, there we go. And since the rotor spins freely, if this is in there tight, it's going to make it tough. So what I did was I take my breaker bar, it's the handle off of my jack, and I shove it between these bolts here and let it rest on the ground. That way, when I'm turning this, it holds the entire wheel and keeps it from spinning on me. Now, taking this out, as you can see, mine came out very easily. I learned my lesson from the other wheel. What I ended up having to do was drilling the thing completely out, as you can see, because it got stripped immediately, because I didn't put any PB blaster in it. Now, you can skip the next minute or so, however long it takes me to explain what I did. If it gets stuck, I recommend a good drill bit to drill it out. So this is a 7/32. What I did was I took my drill and my bit and I just drilled it completely out. I mean, it went pretty deep in, and if you keep it centered, it's not going to come out and ruin the thread or anything like that. So you'll be able to then get your bolt remover, I forget what this is called, right off, and then you essentially hammer this in, and when you hammer this in, it sets it so that when you go to loosen, so you put your drill or whatever it's going to be to loosen it with, and when you loosen, it actually counters it and pulls this bolt out. So you get your drill, you get your bit, you drill a hole deep enough to hammer this in, bam, 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 and then you turn it counterclockwise and it actually comes out really nice and easily. I didn't have to do that this time because the PB blaster seemed to have worked. Either that or I just got lucky on this one. So now that this has been removed, set that aside. Some people say to throw it out. I say if you can reuse it, just put it back in on the new one. And then this is pretty frozen on there. Give it some kicks. Let's see if that works. No. Now, opposite of the other one, which is ironic because this came out pretty easily. Must have been the PB blaster. I don't know. This one was a little bit more frozen in. What I did, I put some PB blaster in, let it soak in each of these, let it soak around the edge, put a little bit in here on the surface. Took my hammer. If you do this, be prepared to replace the rotor because you're going to beat it up. But I gave it a few good whacks with the hammer on either side, top, bottom, came around the back, gave it a few good whacks, hit it around here like this. There you go. And then what helped was using two hands, one on this side and one on this side. I just went back and forth and back and forth, rotated the wheel, back and forth and back and forth, and eventually you feel it start to break. Don't worry about damaging the rotor. If you're doing it this method, you're going to replace this rotor. And then eventually, once it comes off, it just slides right off. There you go. Now, as you can see, I got the rotor off, but I put the caliper back on. I didn't tighten it completely, I just tightened it so that it was a little snug, so that this doesn't move. But that's the easiest for me, and I've found you get good clearance in here too without the rotor on there to do what you need to do. So I took this again and with the hammer, and I'm gonna knock both of these out using this and the hammer. Let's see, can I get it done like this? I think so. There we go, pardon that adjustment. Now, what you're gonna find, and I'm gonna show you this, is, especially with the type of punch that I used, it's only gonna go so far, and then you're not gonna be able to get this pin out the rest of the way. To make it easier, I'll show you my trick. So this trick does require a helper. My helper's not here right now to show, but I put my hammer in right here, go like that, so that it's against the pin right there. You see the pin? Okay, then I simply put this in here, and while my helper holds the hammer, I use another hammer to continue hitting. Okay, so the trick that I did to get these pins the rest of the way, now this really works the best if these are really stuck. Otherwise, you can kind of just push your punch around the edge and push this through. But if they're really stuck, what you do is take the hammer with a helper and see how it's against this side of the pin there. So then the helper, he's gonna hold it up for me, and I'll take the pin, I'll push it through just like last time. I'll get another hammer and just hammer it through until it comes out completely. Now it's tough to do with one hand, so let me get that out. Now once it's far enough out, you can just slide the pads. They'll come right out, slide them off the pins, but you still need to get the pins out the rest of the way. I guess unless you're not going to replace them, you can leave them, but you've gotten this far, I definitely recommend going ahead and replacing them because you're there. And then we'll do the hammer trick to get this out the rest of the way. Once the pin is completely out, once it gets about flush, you can just pull it out with your hand or maybe get the punch and punch it through the other side. Whatever you need to do to get them banged out. And then next, I'm going to get some brake clean. And I like to go over all of this. I use a good half a can to a full can of brake clean. to get it all off. Anything that's extra stubborn, I'll get like a wire brush to kind of scrape off. It's not gonna look perfect, it's probably not even gonna look close to perfect, but just to get some of that extra crud off. Now, I was told at one point to avoid hitting rubber with any of the brake clean. I don't know, it's kind of easier said than done, but I suppose it doesn't hurt to avoid the rubber. Just make sure you kind of get any extra dirt off, but you definitely don't want that rubber to break or you'll be replacing the whole caliper. I'll take another quick break just to advise, if you are going to replace the entire caliper, it's pretty simple from here. You just undo this bolt. This bolt right here is the only thing that's connecting your brake line on. Have a little pan down here to catch any brake fluid that leaks out. And afterwards, you'll have to bleed the line to get any air out. My goal on this job is to not have to bleed the brakes, but these are your bleeder screws right here. I'm not going to go over how to do a brake bleed in this video. There's plenty out there to get an idea of what to do. So with that said, let's go ahead and get this cleaned up and get the new brakes installed. All right, here's the old pads versus the new pads. These are the old ones. They're a little bit worn out. They weren't quite needing to be replaced, but some on this truck were worse than others, so there's some unevenness going on. Hopefully we can fix that with proper lubricating our parts. These are the old pins, the old bracket, and this is all the new stuff. Quite a bit thicker. And then the new rotor and the old rotor. You know, my hammer dent's in there. As far as installing goes, there's a few spots you want to lubricate. I'm going to lubricate the entire pin here, and then I'm going to get some lubrication on the edge, just this edge here and this edge here, and that'll help it to move freely in the bracket, to help with some of that uneven wear. Helps it wear more evenly. I'll go ahead and let's start getting them on. All right, now we are ready to put our pads back on. You see my rubber boot popped back out. One thing that's important is, as you're installing the pad, just to make sure that this rubber boot isn't hinching on the piston, because that could cause problems if it does. Okay, now my brake pads, you'll tell they only go in one way. So this one here, you can see it has this little indicator on it. This one's gonna go in. Now I lubricated the back and I lubricated the edges as per the instructions, and then it just slides right in here. Here we go. Just let that rest. And then the same for the inner one. I lubricated the back, and I lubricated these edges, and we'll slide this in right here. Okay. Now, to help ensure that I don't pinch my rubber gasket, put them in flush like that. Seat. There we go. Make sure they go in flat. Now, there's a couple methods you could use for the bracket. What I prefer to do is just you can kind of let it sit there like that before you put the pin in. Then take the pin. Let's see if I can do it like this. Take the pin, put it through here. So make sure it goes through the hole there, and then you keep pressing it, and then it can go right, it'll just slide right through there like that. Now you have to press it in a little bit right here. Make sure that's seated. There you go. Make sure it pads out. It's tough to do with one hand. Push it in. Okay. I'm actually gonna have to put this down to keep it in. I'll be right back. Okay, got it seated. Just gonna give a little love tap to the pin here. Not super hard, just enough to get it in. And there it is. And as you can see, our little hole is visible to put our cotter pin in. And the cotter pin, you'd be surprised how nicely it goes in. Slide it in. There you go. That's all there is to it. And we'll do the same thing on the bottom. Okay, and with this assembly together, what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to remove the caliper again so we can put the rotor on, and then we'll put it all back together. Okay, with the caliper bracket off, grab my chair, put this on. If you're gonna reinstall your rotor screw, make sure your small hole there lines up, which I am going to reinstall it. When you put it in, there's no torque specification for this, or if there is, I'm not even going to bother to look for it. Just put it in as tight as you need to. Don't over tighten it so you can never get it off again. But if you're going to keep it on, don't keep it too loose. But honestly, when you put the wheel on, it covers it and holds the rotor in. So this is really just tertiary, really, to hold it on. Supposedly it's a factory item, so when it's coming down the assembly line, it holds the rotor on. And then lastly, you can take the whole caliper assembly and set it on. You got to make sure your pads are both pressed completely up against the wall here so that they'll fit. If for some reason it doesn't fit or it's too tight, you want to check two things. Well, a few things: that your pads are completely pressed against, that you have the right size rotor. Sometimes they can sell them too thick, and you got to make sure that the pistons are all the way in. If any of those things are a problem, you don't want to use your new brake pads to try to get your pistons in. So you have to completely disassemble this to make sure the pistons go in all the way. I'll put it on. And there it is, et voila. Mine went on without a fight. Got the first one started. Once you get the first one started, the next one will go in rather simply. I mean, we've already done this a couple times, but bolt in, rotate the assembly until it bites, and screw it in. One thing I failed to mention is putting these in is I did put a little bit of thread lock on them. There was thread lock on it when I took it off. Part of the reason why it was so tough to get off. I didn't go overboard, just like a drop, just to keep the vibration from backing the bolts out. Let's see, if you choose not to, just do so at your own risk. I only did it because it was on there. Now I have 59 foot-pounds is the torque specification, plus 15 to 30 degrees, or so they say. So I've set mine to 60. I torque it. There we go. Then I'm gonna get my regular ratchet and socket and give it another 15-degree torque. And that should be it. Here's your whole assembly. Looks good. Nice work. And we'll put the wheel on, lower the vehicle, and don't forget to take your bungee cord out if that's what you used, so it's not rattling around and they're busting things up. Anyways, that should do it with all the bolts in. I hope you found this video helpful. Please make sure you like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how you think I did, what you would have done different. There's a few other videos on processes. This is the way that I found was most useful to me. Hopefully this helped, saved you a little bit of money.